The Silence of the Lambs wasn't just a thriller. It was a psychological weapon built from real serial killer tapes, a stalker's obsession, and a Federal Bureau of Investigation consultant, so traumatized he needed therapy after production. Gene Hackman bought the rights, then ran. Sean Connery called it repugnant. Hopkins dumped by his girlfriend because she couldn't separate him from a cannibal. And the actress in The Pit gained 25 pounds because Jonathan Demme refused to let anyone act. Here are 20 darkest facts nobody tells you about The Silence of the Lambs. Number 20. Hackman bought rights then fled. Gene Hackman doesn't just want to act in The Silence of the Lambs. He wants to direct it, write it, and star as Hannibal Lecter. He splits the $500,000 rights cost with Orion Pictures and begins developing the project personally. But then, two things happen. First, Hackman's daughter reads the novel and calls him deeply disturbed by the extreme violence. Second, Hackman watches a clip of himself at the Oscars for Mississippi, burning a heavy, violent role, and decides he cannot spend another year swimming in human darkness. Hackman quietly exits. He abandons the director's chair and the lead role. The studio already knows Hackman won't last. The man who could have played Lecter runs from the material that makes Anthony Hopkins a legend. Number 19. Connery called it repugnant. Jonathan Demme wants Anthony Hopkins from his very first read of the script. But Hopkins in 1990 carries almost no American box office recognition. Jonathan Demme makes the commercial calculation and approaches Sean Connery first. Connery reads the script. His response is immediate and unambiguous. He finds the material repugnant, not challenging, not difficult. Repugnant, a word suggesting moral revulsion rather than artistic hesitation. He turns the role down without extended deliberation. The refusal sends Jonathan Demme directly to Hopkins, his original instinct. Hopkins reads the same material Connery finds repugnant and immediately understands its power. He accepts without hesitation. Connery, who dominates action films for decades, passes on the role that transforms Hopkins' entire career and wins him an Academy Award. The most commercially safe choice walks away. The right choice steps forward. Number 18. Pfeiffer and three others fled. Michelle Pfeiffer and Jonathan Demme share creative history. Before The Silence of the Lambs, they worked together on Married to the Mob in 1988. Jonathan Demme considers her for Clarice Starling immediately, before approaching any other actress. Pfeiffer reads the script and declines. The dark themes make her uncomfortable. The sexual violence, the psychological brutality, the material's unflinching depiction of women as targets, it's more than she wants to inhabit professionally. Jonathan Demme then approaches Meg Ryan, Gina Davis, and Melanie Griffith. All declined for similar reasons. Jodie Foster, who desperately wants the role, discovers Jonathan Demme has been hired and panics knowing Pfeiffer is his first choice. Foster calls and visits Jonathan Demme personally in New York, making her case directly. By the time every other option declines, Foster has already positioned herself as the only logical choice. Number 17. Why Foster really fought for Clarice. Hollywood myth loves to claim Jodie Foster takes this role because of her real-life stalker, John Hinckley. This is entirely false. Foster fiercely separates her personal trauma from her work. Her actual motivation for fighting so hard to play Clarice Starling is much more profound for cinema history. Foster reads the novel and realizes something groundbreaking. Clarice isn't a victim. In a genre built on dead or helpless women, Clarice is a hero whose sole mission is to save another woman. No male savior. No romance plot. Just a brilliant female professional navigating a sea of predatory men to rescue a female victim. Foster recognizes the script isn't just a thriller, it's a feminist milestone disguised as a horror movie. Number 16. Glenn listened to real torture tapes. Scott Glenn plays Jack Crawford, the Federal Bureau of Investigation behavioral science chief who sends Clarice to interview Lecter. To prepare Glenn for the role, Federal Bureau of Investigation consultant John Douglas sits him down and plays actual recordings, not descriptions, not case files. Audio recordings of a serial killer torturing a victim while the victim is still alive. Glenn listens to the tapes. What he hears changes him permanently. He describes the experience as something he cannot unhear audio that reshapes his understanding of human cruelty in ways that never leave him after filming wraps. Douglas later reflects on his decision with obvious regret. My attitude was different then. My colleagues and I had so much work. We were so stressed out. The casual decision to play a Hollywood actor recordings of real criminal torture reflects a desensitization Douglas later recognizes as deeply troubling. Glenn Crawford carries something in his eyes throughout the film that other actors playing law enforcement never quite achieve. Number 15. Hopkins modeled Lecter on Charles Manson. Anthony Hopkins constructs Hannibal Lecter from specific behavioral observations that produce one of cinema's most disturbing physical performances. He deliberately chooses to almost never blink. But he doesn't pull this out of thin air. Hopkins obsessively watches videotapes of cult leader Charles Manson. He notices that when Manson speaks, his eyes remain locked, wide, and entirely unblinking, violating every normal human reflex. Human brains are wired to recognize normal blink patterns. Lecter's eyes violate this expectation continuously, making the audience subconsciously terrified. Add to that the improvised slurping sound after the fava beans line. The most disturbing thing Lecter does physically emerges from sheer, terrifying instinct. Number 14. Hopkins dumped by the real Martha Stewart. Anthony Hopkins wins the Academy Award for Best Actor for The Silence of the Lambs. His career transforms overnight, and his girlfriend dumps him because of it. Hopkins is in a relationship with the actual Martha Stewart, yes, the famous billionaire lifestyle and television mogul. When The Silence of the Lambs reaches theaters and Hopkins's Lecter becomes a cultural phenomenon, Stewart finds herself unable to separate the actor from the role. She later admits she couldn't stop imagining him eating human brains. The relationship ends. Most actors who play villains maintain enough separation that people around them can engage normally. Hopkins inhabits Lecter so completely that one of the most famous women in America cannot maintain that separation. Number 13. Foster was physically terrified of Hopkins. Anthony Hopkins and Jodie Foster deliver one of cinema's most intimate and psychologically intense screen partnerships. In reality, they barely speak off camera because Foster is legitimately terrified of him. Their first read-through of the script is so intense that when Hopkins channels Lecter's voice, it sends chills down Foster's spine. During production, Hopkins stays locked inside his plexiglass cell between takes, remaining deeply in character. Foster later admits she actively avoids him on set. The palpable tension you see on screen isn't just incredible acting. It's the genuine discomfort of an actress standing opposite a man she is genuinely too afraid to talk to when the cameras stop rolling. Number 12. Buffalo Bill built from 3 real killers. James Gunn Buffalo Bill isn't invented. Thomas Harris builds the character from the documented behaviors of 3 real serial killers, whose cases the Federal Bureau of Investigation Behavioral Science Unit studies intensively. Ed Gein provides the skin suit. Gein murders at least 2 women in Wisconsin during the 1950s and creates items from human skin and bones. His workshop contains a vest constructed from female torsos. The image defining Buffalo Bill's pathology comes directly from Gein's documented behavior. Ted Bundy provides the charm and manipulation. The way Bill lures Catherine Martin into his van by feigning injury mirrors Bundy's documented tactics precisely. Gary Heidnik provides the pit. Heidnik imprisons multiple women in a pit dug in the basement of his Philadelphia home. The specific horror of Catherine Martin's situation, the pit, the lotion, the basket, comes directly from Heidnik's real crimes documented during his 1988 trial. The most disturbing element of Buffalo Bill isn't invention, it's compilation. Number 11. Pit actress gained 25 pounds for role. Brooke Smith has exactly 1 previous acting credit when Jonathan Demme casts her as Catherine Martin, the senator's daughter imprisoned in Buffalo Bill's pit. Jonathan Demme's casting choice is deliberate. He wants genuine vulnerability rather than performed vulnerability. Jonathan Demme tells Smith he wants to honor real-life victims of imprisonment and captivity. He doesn't want someone acting trapped. He wants someone who can access real desperation. Smith gains 25 pounds for the role to physically embody the changes that imprisonment creates in a human body. Jonathan Demme later says, "The pit scenes are the hardest sequences he shoots in the entire production. Not the Lecter escape, not the basement climax." A woman in a pit, genuinely terrified, represents the film's emotional core in ways that disturb the director creating them. Smith's inexperience doesn't show on screen. What shows is exactly what Jonathan Demme wants. A person, not a performance. Number 10. The wrench drop stays in the film. During the scene where Clarice tells Lecter about the lambs, one of the film's most emotionally devastating sequences, a crew member drops a wrench somewhere off camera. The sound is audible in the footage. The take isn't technically clean. Jodie Foster doesn't break. She stays completely inside the scene without acknowledging the intrusion. She watches the take back and tells Jonathan Demme to keep it. Jonathan Demme agrees. The wrench drop stays in the final theatrical release. It's audible if you know to listen for it. The decision reflects both Foster's confidence in her performance and Jonathan Demme's conviction that authentic emotional truth matters more than technical perfection. The scene where Clarice reveals her deepest childhood trauma to the man most likely to use it against her contains an accidental sound that nobody removes because the performance surrounding it is too real to sacrifice for cleanliness. Number 9. The poster skull isn't a moth. The iconic promotional poster shows a death's head hawk moth positioned over a woman's face, its wings containing a skull image. The moth is specifically chosen because its natural markings suggest a human skull, perfect visual symbolism for a film about a killer obsessed with transformation and death. But the skull visible in the moth's markings on the poster isn't the natural marking at all. Designer Don Bailey discovers during poster development that the image used is Salvador Dali's photograph, composed of 7 naked female bodies arranged to form a skull shape. Most people who see the poster don't know they're looking at 7 women arranged into a skull inside a moth's wings above another woman's face. The image works as pure gothic horror. It also works as a multi-layered statement about female bodies, death, and transformation, all themes the film explores, encoded into promotional artwork that reaches millions of people who never consciously decode it. Number 8. Jonathan Demme shot Clarice's humiliation deliberately. Jonathan Demme and cinematographer Tak Fujimoto designed the film's camera language around Clarice's experience of being female in a male institution. Every shot is calculated to make audiences physically feel her disadvantage. Tall actors are deliberately cast in supporting roles specifically to make Foster appear physically overwhelmed. The camera shoots characters addressing Clarice directly into the lens, so audiences receive the same direct, often threatening male attention she does. Clarice is always shown looking slightly to one side of the camera, never directly back. The elevator scene, where Clarice is surrounded by male agents towering over her, is designed to create physical discomfort in viewers. Jonathan Demme uses red lighting at specific moments to signal impending aggression, a signal operating subconsciously, registering as unease before audiences consciously understand why. The camera doesn't observe Clarice's experience, it replicates it. Number 7. Hopkins mocking Foster's accent was real. The moment where Lecter mocks Clarice's West Virginia accent is scripted. What isn't scripted is how Hopkins delivers it, the specific precision of his mimicry, the exactness of his imitation, the moment he chooses to deploy it. Foster feels personally attacked, not professionally challenged, personally attacked. Her on-screen reaction, the flash of genuine hurt, the quick recovery, the determination to continue despite being wounded, is real. It's not performed vulnerability. It's actual vulnerability generated by an actor choosing to genuinely wound his scene partner rather than simulate wounding her. Foster later thanks Hopkins for the improvisation. The genuine reaction he provokes gives the scene authenticity that couldn't be manufactured through conventional technique. But the thanks comes later, after she processes what he does. In the moment, the camera captures something belonging to Jodie Foster rather than Clarice Starling, a real person being hurt in real time. Number 6. LGBTQ. Community protested at the Oscars. The silence of the Lambs sweeps the 1992 Academy Awards Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Adapted Screenplay. Outside the ceremony, hundreds of protesters block the entrance, confronting nominees and presenters directly. The protest is organized by LGBTQ advocacy groups who argue that Buffalo Bill's characterization, a man who wants to become a woman and murders women to make a skin suit, perpetuates dangerous stereotypes connecting gender dysphoria with violence. Jonathan Demme later acknowledges the criticism has merit. He admits he could have done more to contextualize James Gunn's psychology. His response is genuine rather than defensive. He goes on to direct Philadelphia in 1993, a film explicitly about AIDS, gay identity, and institutional discrimination, which many interpret as direct engagement with the criticism leveled at Silence of the Lambs. The protest outside the Oscars shapes Jonathan Demme's subsequent career more visibly than the awards he collects inside. Number 5. The basement scene was shot in genuine blindness. The film's climactic sequence, Clarice pursuing Buffalo Bill through absolute darkness, is often assumed to be Hollywood magic where the actors can actually see. The truth is much more terrifying. Jonathan Demme plunges the basement set into actual, near-total darkness. Jodie Foster is genuinely fumbling blind, completely disoriented. Meanwhile, Ted Levine playing Buffalo Bill is equipped with actual, functioning, military-grade night vision goggles. He can see her perfectly, she cannot see him at all. Foster doesn't have to act terrified of a predator hunting her in the dark. Levine literally holds all the visual power in the room, creating an atmosphere of pure, unfiltered dread. Number 4. Real Federal Bureau of Investigation agents appear throughout. The Federal Bureau of Investigation's Behavioral Science Unit doesn't just consult on the Silence of the Lambs. Real agents appear throughout the film in small roles that blur the boundary between documentary and fiction in genuinely disturbing ways. John Douglas, the real profiler who inspires Jack Crawford and serves as the film's primary technical consultant, appears on screen. Jonathan Demme fills the Quantico sequences with actual Federal Bureau of Investigation personnel, real agents, real trainees, real instructors, mixed seamlessly with actors. The opening jogging scene uses Quantico's actual grounds with real trainees running alongside Foster. When Clarice navigates the Federal Bureau of Investigation Academy, she moves through real spaces populated by real people who do this work. The authority figures she encounters aren't actors performing law enforcement, some of them are law enforcement. The film's Federal Bureau of Investigation feels real because significant portions of it are real. The fiction inhabits the facts so completely that distinguishing them becomes impossible. Number 3. The film released on Valentine's Day. Orion Pictures releases The Silence of the Lambs on February 14, 1991, Valentine's Day. This isn't accidental scheduling. It's a deliberate marketing decision that Jonathan Demme describes as one of his favorite choices in the film's release strategy. Valentine's Day traditionally belongs to romantic comedies and date movies. Orion bets that couples seeking a shared cinematic experience will choose The Silence of the Lambs despite its content, and that the discomfort of watching it together creates a different kind of bonding than romance. The strategy works beyond any reasonable expectation. The film earns $260 million worldwide. Jonathan Demme later notes that The Silence of the Lambs on Valentine's Day is his idea of a perfect romance, two people confronting genuine darkness together, discovering whether they can hold on to each other through it. The most disturbing mainstream film of its era becomes paradoxically one of cinema's great Valentine's Day stories. Number 2. Orion was bankrupt during release. The Silence of the Lambs wins Best Picture at the Academy Awards for a studio that files for bankruptcy protection 11 days after the ceremony. Orion Pictures enters Chapter 11 bankruptcy proceedings in December 1991, 3 months before the Oscar ceremony where the film sweeps 5 categories. The studio that creates one of cinema's most acclaimed and profitable films cannot benefit from its success. Revenue from The Silence of the Lambs, $260 million worldwide, flows into bankruptcy restructuring rather than studio development. Orion cannot use the film's success to greenlight new productions or rebuild its infrastructure. The film that could have saved Orion arrives too late. The Oscar sweep happens while the company legally cannot conduct normal business. The Silence of the Lambs wins every award available to a film. The studio that makes it wins nothing from the victory. Number 1. Hopkins prepared the role in 5 days. Anthony Hopkins receives The Silence of the Lambs script on a Friday. By Wednesday of the following week, he has read it 250 times. Not reviewed it, not studied sections. Read the complete script, cover to cover, 250 times in 5 days. The preparation method sounds like exaggeration until Hopkins explains the logic. He doesn't analyze the script intellectually. He reads it repeatedly until every word, every pause, every moment exists as automatic knowledge rather than memorized material. By the time he arrives on set, Lecter isn't something Hopkins performs, it's something he contains. Hopkins films his entire role in just 16 days of actual shooting. The performance that wins an Oscar, that transforms his career, that produces one of cinema's most discussed characters captured in 16 days of work preceded by 250 readings. The 16 days are just the moment when what already exists inside gets recorded. Bonus fact. The real Clarice went uncredited. The Federal Bureau of Investigation agent who most directly inspires Clarice Starling works in the behavioral science unit during the period Thomas Harris researches his novel. Unlike John Douglas, whose real-world identity is publicly acknowledged and who serves as the film's consultant, the women who cooperate with Harris's research do so under conditions of significant professional sensitivity. Multiple female Federal Bureau of Investigation agents who inspire Clarice's character request that their contributions remain uncredited. The institutional environment that makes Clarice Starling's story resonate, the sexism, the isolation, the navigation of male authority through intelligence alone, is the same environment that makes the real women who inspired her reluctant to be identified publicly. The character who becomes one of cinema's great feminist icons emerges from real women whose actual experiences remain deliberately obscured. The most celebrated female protagonist in thriller history is built from the hidden stories of women who still can't tell their own. The Silence of the Lambs wins 5 Oscars for a bankrupt studio, premieres on Valentine's Day, gets protested at its own award ceremony, and permanently changes what American cinema considers acceptable for mainstream audiences. The film Connery calls repugnant, that Hackman runs from, that Hopkins' girlfriend cannot separate from reality. It becomes the 3rd film in history to sweep the Big 5 Academy Awards. The film reminds us that the most disturbing art often comes from the most uncomfortable places, from a director who loved women's pictures, an actress driven by personal trauma, and a performer who read the same script 250 times until a cannibal lived inside him.